Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I. Yes, that's right. Your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and of course, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema. Oh, wait, hang on, there's more. Your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your pharaoh of physical media, and of course, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me. Robert Meyer Burnett. Once again, are we getting a little tired of these videos, the graphics at the beginning? I think they might run a little long. Maybe I can just rattle them off without seeing them. You know, I can bring them back occasionally. Either way, Robert Meyer Burnett, Robcasting at you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Welcome. Today is Thursday. What, the 17th of September? I've come to, I used to count the days. Now I don't count the days. It really doesn't matter. And the only reason I counted the days was because I wanted to count the days up until the release of various movies. With no movies coming out, what do I care? Every day is like the next. I'm going to come on, play with some toys, Robcast at you, make some stuff, look at something we're doing. I don't know. I've been working on this project, a passion project that I've wanted to do for 30 years, working on that. Stuff's happening. But I kind of like the idea that the immediacy of life has been removed by not caring about what day it is. I don't know what that means. But I keep going. I mean, I seem to be more productive in my life when I'm not worrying about, oh my God, there's something, I just keep making stuff. I kind of like that. Well, you know what else we're making? Not just me, but all of us. All of us here, all of you imagination connoisseurs. That is correct. The first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival opens. The entries open on October 1st. Hopefully we'll get some movies. But you know what we are getting? Poster entries. As you all know, up until September 30th, or is it April, huh? What is the old adage? Is it 31 days? I forget that little saying. All the days. Anyway, September 30th, September 31st, we are running a poster contest for the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. And wow, as you know, we saw Ian Samuels sent one in, and we got a few other ones that I showed yesterday, which is cool. But we got some more in, ladies and gentlemen. Roberto Suarez with his homage to Anatomy of a Murder. His honorarium or honor, he's honoring Saul Bass here. I love this poster, which is very, very cool. Tom Markinson sent this one in. Look at this. I like this poster. You're in an empty movie theater. Kind of reminds me of what's going on right now. But we're going to hopefully alleviate that. Well, we're not going to have movie theaters, but we are going to have a film festival. It'll be virtual. But hey, it'll be great. And look who's here. BL Alley is here with a film festival poster. I really kind of like this because it does look like an ad for a TRS-80 computer from 1980. It's got a great retro look to it. I really like this poster. Very, very cool. And of course, our boy Swack Props, Cal, all the way from Malaysia, comes in with it's pretty dark. I like it, but very enjoyable, very enjoyable. And we're getting more in all the time. So, as you know, I am not going to pick these posters. You are going to pick these posters. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, we're going to take a poll. And we're going to vote on them. And I'm even going to vote on them. I guess you could vote on a poll as many times as you want. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how many entries we're going to get. But I have to tell you, I mean, we've got so far, there's 7 here. There's more coming in. And I think, if we had 7 films, the thing that worries me about this film festival, look, I'm not going to lie to you. We just made it up. So we just made up this film festival. So and I'm expecting people to make movies in 2 months. I know that Dieter Bastian and Patrick Keller have a movie. And I'm going to make, by the way, because it's my film festival and I can do whatever I want, even though I shouldn't say that. It is our film festival. But I am going to make, as our first entry, Patrick Keller and Dieter Bastian's sequel, their follow-up to The Secret Exchange. The Secret Exchange 2, Broken Promises, is the official entry into our film festival. I'm just saying that because I can. But honestly, it's all up to you guys and girls and gentle beings and kind souls, however you identify, from across the 28 known galaxies. I don't know if we're even going to get in any films. I mean, what I'm doing is I'm basically saying, hey, kids, here's something to do for the next 2 months. And by December 1st, if you send in movies, we will judge them. All of us will judge them. And, of course, the semifinalists, the creme de la creme, we are going to put online for all the world to see beginning on December 15th. And that is going to be an award, the Sally Field Lifetime Appreciation Award, that we will be giving to the film that gets the most likes. Come on, it's that kind of a film festival. And I am going to reach out to Sally Field and see if I can actually get her. I mean, I'm sure her agent's going to agent me and say, well, Sally's happy to do a video for you, but it's going to cost a lot of money. If I can't get her, I can't get her. That's why we are charging an entry fee for the festival, because we have things we're going to have to pay for. But that would be worth paying for. I don't know if Sally Field's on Cameo, but I would drop 30. I'd go up to like $300. Go into Cameo and pay some money and get her to say something for this, because we are, after all, naming an award after her, and we are going to make trophies. So part of the entrance fee is we're going to make nice Post-Geek Singularity trophies, like really nice trophies, and there are going to be cash prizes. And 3 and 4 figure. Now I don't know if we're going to go up to 4 figures, but we're going to give cash prizes out, so it'll be fun. And if the films are good enough, maybe we'll even make a Blu-ray. I think it'd be pretty fun. I mean, I am, after all, the pharaoh of physical media, so it would be fun to make a Blu-ray of everybody's movies. And, make it, sell it, promote the film festival for next year. Because it should be, after all, it is an annual event. So I want to thank everybody in advance for your creativity. I mean, judging by the creativity on the posters already, if I only got as many movies as I got posters now, I think we'd have a fine film festival. I mean, if we got 7 movies, I would be astonished. Hell, I'm going to be astonished if we get more than Patrick and Dieter's movie. I know that movie's been shot already, but who knows what's going to happen with this film festival. And I guess that's kind of the fun of it. We'll see, and we're not going to know. I'm not going to know until December 1st how many movies we're going to get. So I hope you're all interested in doing it. I'd love to see movies from all of you, and I will warn everyone, I am not making any distinctions. It's kind of like that story I told about being a Cub Scout and doing the Pinewood Derby with my dad. We grew up in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, and we would do the Pinewood Derby. The Pinewood Derby is you make these cars, out of a wood block, and they have wheels on them, and then you race them. But of course, in Seattle, half the kids of my age had fathers that were Boeing engineers. So you had to deal with the fact that they're Boeing engineers, and they would come up with these flying wing designs. You knew the kids barely worked on them, but my car, my dad and I worked on them together. And my dad would spend weeks just putting graphite. I'm like, I never said it to him, but I'm thinking, Dad, there's only so much graphite that can fit basically on the head of a pin. But it was fun. We always came in second. And my dad would always apologize to me. I think I was in Cub Scouts for 3 years, and then we did it when I was Webelos. So you were Bobcat, Bear, and Fox or something. I don't remember. But it was fun, and we did it together. But my dad always apologized to me. He always said, I'm sorry we're not going to win. And I would always say to my dad, and I meant this, I was like, Dad, you and I are having a great time together. So we're not destined to win the Pinewood Derby because we live in an area of the country where there's a lot of Boeing engineers. And we lived in an upper middle class environment, so there were a lot of Boeing engineers in our hometown of Mercer Island. Now I could never even afford to live there. But still, I'm just saying. So I want everybody to have fun with this film festival. I don't want anybody to get competitive. Same with these. I see people looking at people's poster entries and saying, oh, well, I'm not going to do it now. No, I mean, the whole point is it's yes, look, not everybody gets a trophy for participating. I'll tell you that. That's not what life is. Remember, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. That's what you get. But I think it's part of that is that not all of life is about winning. It's also about having fun. And I know people would say, well, Rob, doesn't that mean you're participating? Yes, but you know what? It's not necessarily the destination, it's the journey. Remember, I don't believe in equal outcome. I believe in equal opportunity, and we are providing that for you. And I think the opportunity is a good one. The outcome is that we should all have a smile on our face when we leave, and because we're going to have a good time. Speaking of good times, now, you know, I'm always reading articles about, like, I love the business of entertainment, the ecosystems and the business of entertainment fascinates me. How does money change hands? How do you finance films now in this day and age when you have global financiers? What kind of deals do you make? What happens when you buy a property? You know, what happens then if you buy someone else's IP and you want to turn it into a movie? I mean, I will say this. The animated series that I've been doing, again, a very, very, very small bit of work on, but work nonetheless, is based, I haven't announced what it is, but it is based on an existing IP. And it's interesting to see how IP holders interact with people that are working on their product. Because, you know, one of the things that is important, I think, is that if you become the steward of someone else's IP or a previously existing IP that has been around for a while, like if you decide you're going to get the remake rights from a foreign country, you know, for their movies, like Christopher Nolan remade Insomnia. So what obligation do you have to the IP holders? I think you have a great responsibility. It's like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. If you acquire an IP, I think it's important to honor that IP. Many of you know that I'm working on a new film project that work has begun, money has been spent, that I'm beginning the long process to make basically the presentation that I have for the screenplay that I want to make, and I'm doing that right now. And I've also been working on Free Enterprise in the hopes that we could do a 4K version of it. I've done a recut of the movie, just tighten it up, I think make it better. And one of the things that I would do with a 4K transfer is I would make my original cut of the film, but I would make it available in its original aspect ratio, but also the widescreen aspect ratio. You could have both. And there's examples of the widescreen version that I've been putting on YouTube. I just dropped a new version of the opening of Free Enterprise with Eric McCormack, pitching his magnum opus Brady Killer in the new aspect ratio, the 239:1 aspect ratio in 4K for you gearheads, or that would be 4096 by 1716 pixels. So it's 2048. In 2K, it'd be 2048 by 858 pixels. 858? 848. 858. I think 858. Anyway, so there you go. That's what I would like to do. But so I love the business of entertainment. But here's something. There was an article in the Hollywood Reporter today that I thought was pretty interesting, and it's not something that I normally think about. And it's interesting because you should think about this because it affects literally every single one of us. And it's a big deal, and it's going to become a bigger deal as we go on. So here is the article. Again, it was in today's Hollywood Reporter. And why cash-strapped towns are suing streaming giants. This was published today at 6:15 a.m. by Eric Gardner. A growing number of municipalities are going to court against Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus to argue these companies need to pay their fair share of revenue as a utility fee. Now, I remember back when I was a kid, let's face it, I'm still a kid, damn it. I'm a big middle-aged man-child. But when I was a kid, I remember there was always a big deal when cable was being brought in to various communities. And the first time when I got my VCR and became a movie fanatic, my parents were very, very cool. I mean, they supported I guess it was an addiction. They were enablers, clearly. But we couldn't get cable on Mercer Island. It hadn't been brought to us yet. So the first cable channel we had was Showtime. And to get Showtime, they came and they put this giant antenna on our roof. I mean, it was badass. It was like a total Jerry Anderson, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet. Like, it looked like it rose out like a Derek Meddings miniature, rolls out of the top of the middle of our house, and it was rad. I mean, it was, every time I walked out of the house, I thought my parents were the coolest people because we had a giant space antenna on our roof that was only so I could get Showtime and record movies. I mean, my parents were pretty badass, I have to say. And I had a great upbringing. I mean, like, the Tooth Fairy didn't bring me money. The Tooth Fairy brought me the Mego superhero action figure that I wanted. Like, my mom would buy things in advance, and they were in her closet, and then she wouldn't just give me stuff randomly. And I wasn't really spoiled, but because I would really only get stuff for my birthday and for the holidays, for Hanukkah or something. But it was pretty fun. Like, there were times when I started getting the James Blish, when my father would read the James Blish Star Trek 2, 3, 4, 5, the adaptations of the episodes. I remember finding a few when I was a little kid up at Lakeside Drugs in the spindle rack, because I was always buying paperback books, mostly lurid horror novels that were way more the sexual content and the violence of the stuff I was reading at a way too young age was my parents didn't know. They just liked the fact I was reading. But one day I came home and like 4 of the Blish Star Trek books that I needed that I didn't even know were out, because when you're a kid, it's not like you like go to the bookstore and there was no Amazon or anything. So my mom didn't like the fact that, and this is back when paperbacks were like 95 cents. My mom didn't like the fact that I was spending my allowance. She thought my allowance should be like to go out and go get candy with your friends or something, which I thought was weird. I'm like, I want Star Trek novels. Come on, man. And so she would buy them for me, and they would just show up in my bookshelf. And that was the kind of house I lived in. So but anyway, long story short, I totally took a left turn there. But getting cable was a big deal because they had to put in the cable. There was no cable. And, I guess it never occurred to me. I didn't think about this because you're always talking about, fiber optic lines, or they can put in fiber. And I know we just assume that the infrastructure is just there as we demand more and more and more powerful streaming services. And we want our speeds to go up. I mean, I'm always looking at I had to get my faster online speeds to do this show. So, you go and you use that. There's whatever it's called, fast speed. I don't know. I've got the software where you can see what your upload and download speeds are. I was obsessed with that for a while when I was setting up this show out here in the Robservatory. I'm like, man, I got to get faster speed, man, because you can't do it wireless. I mean, you could, but there's problems with that. So anyway, so here's this article, and let's read this article. Until COVID-19 struck, Mayor Annette Blackwell felt like her city of Maple Heights, Ohio, had finally gotten on its feet again. The 2008 home mortgage crisis had delivered a financial wallop to this suburb that's 15 miles outside of Cleveland. A town that was once mainly Italian and Polish became predominantly African American after World War II. It witnessed thousands of bank foreclosures on the bungalows that line the streets. In turn, that meant numerous property tax delinquencies among Maple Heights citizenry, many of whom work in the service sector. Ohio's state auditor declared a fiscal emergency. Maple Heights was finally set to escape the clutches of state officials by achieving the goals of a mandated recovery plan when the budget-busting pandemic came along. Blackwell knew she needed to do something bold. I began looking for every opportunity to bring in revenue, says Blackwell, whose epiphany resulted from a local business owner sharing a news story about TV streamers. I read up. Then I called our law director. I wanted in. On August 21st, last month, Maple Heights, Ohio, filed a lawsuit against Netflix and Hulu. Blackwell City isn't the only one. Throughout the nation, one American town after another is struggling to figure out how to pay overtime for the city workers who disinfect public transit, plus come up with funds so that the schools can buy laptops for children learning remotely. Many officials have concluded that streamers should be contributing more for local government services and are shirking legal obligations by not doing so. In the past month alone, lawsuits against streamers, including Disney Plus, have come from Reno, Nevada, New Boston, Texas, and Fishers, Indiana. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Each of these suits is guided by Chicago plaintiff lawyers and stylized as a class action over the issue of whether streamers must pay utility fees. If the lawsuits are successful, thousands of other municipalities will benefit too. But what are the prospects for victory? It's going to be an uphill battle for cities, says Covington and Burling partner Mitch Kamen. The law just wasn't structured with streaming in mind. The revolution decades ago to bring cable television into American homes didn't happen without the assent of local governments. Back then, cable operators needed right-of-way to dig up the ground and lay their lines. To get access, these cable companies agreed to give up a portion of their revenue. In the early 1980s, to ensure that no local municipality was going to hinder progress by imposing unduly high fees, Congress amended the Communications Act to set a cap of 5% of revenue on what any local franchising authority could charge. Flash forward. Now remember, this was cable. We were normally getting broadcast television broadcast over the air. So they're laying down cable because we needed to be physically connected to cable television in order to get it. Well, that's the same. While we might have wireless internet now, we still have modems. We're still basically connected. Maybe not all of our. This computer is physically connected to the internet. I'm going through my router. I'm physically connected with an Ethernet cable. So it's the same thing. And as I was thinking about this, I'm like, streaming providers are benefiting from this incredible infrastructure. Now, here's the thing. I will tell you, I am woefully uninformed as to how much cable and streaming services have provided to make pipelines bigger. I mean, I know that our internet infrastructure has constantly being expanded and made better. I don't know who's paying for that. So indeed, streamers might already be paying for that. And I think absolutely they should. I really do think that one of the things about the internet is it's become, obviously, it's a public utility. Everybody's using it. I mean, I don't know if you're going to, because streamers make big use of it, does that mean that then banks need to pay for the internet? Think about everybody. Everybody's got to pay a tax or something. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if suing streamers is necessarily fair. Do you sue? I guess Amazon would be part of that, but think about everything we use the internet for. Obviously, streaming video is the biggest thing that we do, but are you going to go after YouTube? And it just seems strange to me that these people are going after the big streamers like Disney Plus, Hulu, and Amazon. I guess it's odd to me. I think everybody should pay. I mean, I definitely think that there should be, in my mind, there should be absolutely some kind of a federal internet tax, or and maybe they do already. I don't know. But it just seemed to me that suing just the streamers seemed a little odd. So flash forward to today, as greater and greater numbers of consumers are canceling their pricey cable TV service amid increasing digital options. Cord cutting has been meaningful in many ways, including how it's been impacting the coffers of local governments. A 5% cut of a cable operator's revenue isn't nearly as lucrative as it once was. Insiders say that cities could be losing tens of millions of dollars each year because of changing entertainment habits. As such, local officials are beginning to respond. In 2015, Chicago famously enacted an amusement tax that included a 9% assessment on the subscription cost of streaming services such as Netflix and Spotify. So far, the city has successfully defended this tax in court, though the legal fight is hardly over, and perhaps more importantly, other localities haven't shown the same appetite for imposing such a direct tax on their citizens. Instead, cities like Maple Heights, Reno, and New Boston are following the lead of Creve Coeur, Missouri, which for the past 2 years has been in court seeking to make the streamers pay the same franchise fees that cable operators have traditionally rendered. That said, streaming subscribers might ultimately pay for this too. Scott Houston, general counsel at the Texas Municipal League, believes that if the lawsuits are successful, Netflix would likely pass through the cost to customers in a line item on the bill. I got to tell you, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that as long as this infrastructure is constantly upgraded. I mean, right now, streaming's not perfect. And as we have more and more 4K material and other things traversing the internet, I think, is one of the most important public utilities, maybe the most important public utility that's ever existed. And we should start thinking about it. This is the kind of thing that I would coordinate on a global level. I mean, I know the Russians and the Chinese want to fuck us, but it'd be nice to make sure that we have internet everywhere. Of course, Elon Musk is doing that with Starlink, but he's doing that in orbit. How is that going to work? I don't know. Will I be able to live stream through his? I signed up. They said, would you like to be a, I don't know, beta tester? Yes, Elon, I would. I would like to be a beta tester. Hook me up, son. Make it happen. The streamers, of course, are resisting. The nature of this legal battle has cities and streamers discussing in court the operations of digital video delivery in detail. For instance, how a company like Netflix moves data and where it maintains its local servers. It also has the parties attempting to square these operations with what's specifically in the statutes. For instance, in the Missouri case, Netflix claims it isn't a video service provider and therefore isn't subject to rules meant for cable operators. Netflix turns to the relevant law, which defines video programming as to what a television broadcast station does. See, now here's the thing. This is, I guess, my problem with, I'm a capitalist. I'm not a Marxist and I'm not a socialist, but I mean, I believe in social programs within a capitalist system. Nothing wrong with that. But here's what I don't like. I don't like this kind of monkey business that happens when you're like, okay, we have evolved. We have evolved into a different system. It's not cable operators. It's not broadcast television. But Netflix knows full well when they go, oh, we're not a video service provider. You fucking are. You are, and you should pay your fair share. It's like rich people. The top 1%. They're the ones that pay the least amount of taxes. It's like, is that really fair? Now, I don't think that very wealthy people should be paying even 50% of their taxes. I mean, I understand with gradated income taxes, but, just pay your fair share. Pay your fair share. Like, if you're making $10 billion and, your taxes within the society that has made you your $10 billion, if you have to pay, say, 45% in taxes, that's still $4.5 billion. And if you still get to keep $5.5 billion, people might say, well, you don't deserve to be a billionaire. I'd say, yeah, you do. But, I mean, come on. You got that money because the rest of the world bought your product or whatever. You're part of this ecosystem. We have to take care of each other. And I feel like at every turn, everybody wants to not keep the infrastructure going. I don't think that's fair. So when Netflix is playing a game, we're not a video service provider. You know what I never see, though? No one's going to Pornhub. Pornhub should be paying, too. And whatever their networks are, whether it's Chatterbait or RedTube or YouPorn, whatever. I mean, all the porn sites that come under, that'd be the first place that I would go. But I just, it irks me when I read this. Netflix claims it isn't a video service provider and therefore isn't subject to rules meant for cable operators. Netflix turns to the relevant law, which defines video programming as what a television broadcast station does. Yes, the law hasn't changed because we're still evolving and no one's got to that law yet. But they should have, but they haven't. I mean, you're going to see savvy politicians. They have to start thinking. We have to start thinking, people. We have to start thinking ahead. David Cronenberg wrote a script, and it's never been made. It's unproduced. I have a copy of it. And I told him once I had a copy of it. I asked him about it. I think I asked him about it at the screening of Crash that I went to. It's a script called Crimes of the Future. And it's interesting. Yes, I understand, he made an art film when he was a young filmmaker called Crimes of the Future. It's different. And Crimes of the Future was about a division of the law enforcement that exists to go after crimes that have yet to be defined as crimes. And in this script, so Cronenbergian, I loved it so much, people, because of the modern age, a la Todd Haynes' Safe or something, people were spontaneously starting to generate new internal organs, human beings. People didn't know if it was the next stage of evolution or not. Well, uh, there were performance artists that were doing surgeries on stage for audiences where they would remove these new organs and show them and display them and tattoo them. And the main character was a cop, this undercover cop who would go infiltrate these organizations that were doing shit that had yet to be put on the books as crimes. And he was one of these organ generators. And there was a lot of shenanigans happen, but I always thought, man, God, I wish he would make this movie. And it was so weird. I mean, it was such a weird idea, but the idea that our civilization, with bioethics and with the technology that is increasing, we need to start getting out ahead of these things and figuring out our ethical principles are not moving nearly as fast as our new technologies. And that's not just in bioethics or something, but like this. This is something, of course, Netflix knew this was coming. All the streamers know this is coming. But then when it finally does, for them to say, well, we're not a video service provider, so these fees are not... Give me a fucking break. I mean, come on. You have to think ahead. And one of the things, the entertainment business, I mean, they're just trying to stave off the inevitable. I know nobody wants to pay anything. And the entertainment business, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And you know how that goes. But I read this article and I was like, why don't they get out in front of this now and admit that, yes, the broadcast television is going the way of the dodo, along with physical media, along with, it's all changing. And rather than stop inevitable change, why not get out ahead of it? Why not define it? And they don't. And you know what? They should be paying these small towns, because what are we doing in a pandemic? All we're doing is watching Netflix and paying them more money. Streaming services are making a ton more money. Now, I would like to have as much money available to finance movies and TV that I want to be involved with. So I want them to have large sums of cash. But I also believe that we want this infrastructure to work, and the internet, at least for the little small time I have left on this planet, I want the internet to just keep getting better and better and better and better and better. So, anyway, Netflix does not provide programming comparable to that provided by a television broadcast station, argue attorneys for Netflix, adding that city ordinances specifically exclude services that enable users to access content from public networks, like streaming. At least that's how Netflix sees it. Come on, Netflix. I get it, but you're arguing. I can't stand. Our civilization is always doing this. When we talk about being fucked by the big guys. I mean, the man on the street, we end up paying all the fees. You know why people want to leave California? You know how many fees you have to pay here for everything? They get you everywhere, every which way, and it's crazy. And it's kind of not fair. You have to have the infrastructure, the middle class has to exist, because the foundational aspects of our society have to be able to function. We can't have so much income inequality between the owners of our civilization and then the rest of us, because eventually it will crumble and fall. And what we want to do is do the exact opposite. We want to bolster our civilization. We don't want so much income inequality. We want, the idea that we won't pay for the best teachers, well, that's dumb. It's irksome to see this kind of thing go on across every level, every strata of our civilization, especially here in America. We're not thinking in the long term, whether it's environmentally, whether it's socially, whether it's education, whatever it is. And this, I know it's just Netflix and the streaming services, but they're arguing against something, and they know full well that they should be paying, and it's going to be inevitable. But they'll, and that's what I hate. And I understand. Next fiscal quarter, I get it. Everybody wants to keep their money. I get it. It's the push-pull. But it's also inevitable, and at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. I know people are like, Rob, you really want people who have money to do the right thing? No, they don't. They want to keep their money. I get it. But I like Netflix, and I'd like to think that they would get out in front of this problem rather than fight this problem, because they should be paying. They should be paying. They absolutely should be. In our civilization, it's just something a company like Netflix should do. Now, I don't know if it should be a tax, and I don't know why should it be than passed on to the consumer. I get it. I get why. But is that fair? You know, we already are paying for the programming. And the programming's delivery system, unless how is that going to work? Should it be part of our income tax? I don't know. But it seems to me that the infrastructure for the internet should not have to be paid for all by us. When you have streaming services and people that are using inordinate amount of bandwidth, they should be paying for that. You know, the only reason Netflix gets subscriptions is because they can get it into our house because of previously existing internet infrastructure. So anyway, Creve Coeur, of course, has a different take. It emphasizes how Netflix maintains privately owned local facilities and pushes a different interpretation of Missouri law. Of course they do. The city's lawyers argue that in 2007, the state legislature took another look at franchise fees with new technology in mind. The legislature purposefully gave the VSP Act a broad scope because it knew that new companies using new technologies that were not in existence in 2007 would likely someday provide TV content to Missourians through the public right-of-way and would similarly need to pay municipalities a VSP fee for that use, states a memorandum. Well, good on Missouri, because they had some top-notch leadership back in 2007 because they were thinking, and that's what should happen. The streamers have a second big argument, and it's the type of issue that could eventually be tackled by the U.S. Supreme Court. They say that the fees would violate the Internet Tax Freedom Act as a discriminatory tax on electronic commerce. As Hulu puts it, the Creve Coeur seeks to collect a fee from Hulu because Hulu allegedly provides services comparable to television broadcast stations, but Creve Coeur does not collect a fee from those same television broadcast stations. Come on, man. Creve Coeur argues that the streamers have it wrong. They are the privileged ones. In the end, Netflix and Hulu allow subscribers to watch TV with the push of a button, just like other TV content providers, and they have been siphoning subscribers from other TV content providers without paying any VSP fees, putting them in an unfair competitive advantage, stakes Creve Coeur in a bid to stave off dismissal. And they're fucking right. The city asserts there's no discriminatory tax because what the lawsuit seeks to collect isn't a tax. It is a fee for pushing content through the public right-of-way. Goddamn right. Goddamn right it is. And they should fucking pay. A Missouri state judge recently held a hearing on the streamer's motion to dismiss, and the first big ruling on the subject will come sometime in the next few months. I mean, can you believe that? Can you believe that? The streamers who are destroying broadcast television and destroying cable television, they're trying to weasel out of paying the very fees that those other entities would pay to get their programming into your house. So those local towns that were getting those fees are being just eaten away at because of streamers, and the streamers who are doing the exact same thing. It's all semantics. I mean, you can say, okay, technology has made the delivery different, but it's still the same thing, and they're trying to weasel out of it, and that's fucking lame. It's lame. They should pay. They should pay. And this is the problem. Everybody's like, they know they should pay. They know they should pay. They know it's inevitable. These challenges will happen. They're like, well, maybe we won't have to pay for another 10 years. Why not just pay now and straighten it out? Why put this through the courts when the courts could be used for something else? Why do you I constantly read these stories, and I get it. Profit, profit, profit. Money, 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 money. I get it. I understand. But at the end of the day, we also have a civilization that we have to protect. We have infrastructure that we constantly need to update. We can't sit there and expect the world, all of the citizenry here, to pay for everything when everybody's getting rich and there's all the fat cats. And look, as I said, I'm a capitalist, but I believe in fair capitalism. And the problem with our capitalist system is that it's so not fair when companies like Netflix and streamers, which I love, they should be paying their fair share. And their fair share, they're using as they put off that it's the public right of way. Whether it's tax-based infrastructure that we're paying for, I'm telling you. A Missouri state judge recently held a hearing on the streamer's motion to dismiss, and the first big ruling on the subject will come sometime in the next few months. Although neither Netflix or Hulu would speak on the record about these cases. Of course they're not going to, because they know they're wrong, and anything they say just makes them look douchebaggy, and they are. The companies see the presence of outside class action lawyers as being the real instigators. Indeed, two law firms, first Korean Tillery and second DeSillo, Levitt and Gutzler, have hands in all the lawsuits brought so far on this subject. The fact that competing private lawyers have a stake is probably a sign that similar litigation could come soon in other states, and it will. So why not solve the problem now? You know, stave off any future action, figure out what we're going to do, apply it on a national level, and make it work. But Blackwell says there's a larger point at stake. It's about respect, the Maple Heights mayor says. In many ways, we're doing business together. If there's a natural disaster, we are there providing maintenance on infrastructure so that the end product can be delivered. And if people are in a place of crisis, if they don't have jobs, they don't have time to do Netflix. We help them, our citizens, their customers, so they can sit back and enjoy these services. Why would we not be part of the revenue? Here. I totally agree with this. And while I know, ladies and gentlemen, gentle beings, kind souls, all of you, might not be that interested in this as a subject, I understand. I'm not talking about Tatiana Maslansky becoming She-Hulk, which I could. That's cool. I'm in. But I just think these kinds of things are important. They're important because these are things that need to be squared away. They need to be squared away. And we need to figure this kind of stuff out and make it happen. And I don't think it's a partisan issue. You know, I think that we have infrastructure. And if somebody's availing themselves of that infrastructure, they have to pay for it. Because I want the infrastructure to be great. And you know what building infrastructure does? It creates jobs. And that's what we need more of. And I think that all the streamers getting together, I mean, think about it. Think about how much material you're getting through streaming services and that they're not going to pay what cable providers and television stations and all that used to do. I mean, when you lose one and the other guys are benefiting from it, they've got to pick up the slack, man. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that point, but I just thought it was an interesting subject to discuss. I don't know what you guys think. You might be yawning like, Rob, really? Do you really want to talk about this kind of thing on the show? Well, yeah, because I'm making Robservations. So this is what struck me today. Anyway, Omar94 writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. Since you've worked in the film industry, maybe you know the answer to this. If a script for a movie was written years ago for a movie that did not end up getting made, I'm curious to know if that same script could be brought back. In that the exact same script was used word for word if a studio attempts another shot at making the movie. For example, Harlan Ellison wrote a script for I, Robot in 1978, but it wasn't made. But you know what? It was published in the pages of Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, because that's where I read it. I had a subscription. There were two different stories. Why? One was because it was considered unfilmable due to the technology and budget limitations. The other reason, according to Isaac Asimov, was because of a conflict between Ellison and the producers. Producers suggested changes to the script, and Ellison reacted violently and offended the producers instead of being diplomatic, as Asimov advised. So I'm wondering if a studio attempts to give iRobot another shot, the Ellison unused script would be used word for word, or a brand new script from another writer would have to be made. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Omar, that's actually a really great question. Here's the thing. So that was based on an underlying story, iRobot, that Isaac Asimov wrote. Now, the script, how do you put this? There's lots of different ways. I'll give you an example. So if I were to option the book iRobot now, you know, like they made it with Will Smith, but if I were to option iRobot now, what I would do is I would start from scratch, and I would start all over, and I'd hire a writer to write that script. Now, the Harlan Ellison script, I would have really nothing to do with that because I've re-optioned the book, and any development costs would probably, now here's where it can get tricky. So I self-published a comic book called Living in Infamy. And my self-published comic book was this close to being turned into a TV series at Skydance. Almost at the 11th hour, scripts were written, and it was a pretty much a go project. Then they decided not to make it. Now, we still want to make it. I think it'd make a great TV series. Basically, the premise of the show is that it was about the FBI's witness protection program for supervillains. So imagine the end of Goodfellas when you see Ray Liotta talking about how he's like every other poor schnook in his bathrobe. Well, imagine if that guy was a former supervillain. And it was a town of supervillains, and there was an electronic frontier around the town. You were implanted with a device. If you left the perimeter, your head would blow up, and you'd be dead. But you could live your life normally in this town, and then you had a character like a Captain America. And by the way, no one in the town knew you were a supervillain. You're sequestered away. But there was a group of these supervillains, and they were kind of a tight-knit group of friends, and it was all about what happens when someone comes gunning for them, finds out where they are, and someone comes to kill them. And the person that oversees this town is basically a character like Captain America, but he's older. He's in his 60s, and he's retired, but he watches over these guys because he put most of them away. So, and the instigating incident is that character, that Captain America, Lieutenant Liberty, is murdered. And all of our villains are like, well, who did it? One of you did it. And they're suspicious of one another, and they've all got families and things. And so we wrote this script. It was developed, and Skydance spent 6 figures developing this project. So we've got the material. If we wanted to make the show, from what I understand, and if we used the scripts that Skydance paid to develop, we would then have to pay them the money they spent to develop the script. So let's say it's $150,000 or something. We would have to pay that. That would be part of the budget then of the new, if we're making Living in Infamy somewhere else, that would be part of the budget of that script. So we'd have to pay off Skydance to use the material that they developed. So that's how that would work. However, if you option a book, or if somebody else came in and optioned our comic and started from scratch and didn't use anything that was previously created, I don't think you would have to pay Skydance to do that. So I don't think that in the case of iRobot, I don't know if they had, because they made the movie, they made iRobot, and I don't know, it was very, very different, obviously, than the book, and obviously very different, I'm sure, from Harlan Ellison's script. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think he gets credit for it. So it depends. However, you absolutely can use scripts that are around. Like, I'll tell you, so when I worked at Warner Brothers and I was at Silver Pictures as a reader, when I was there as a reader in the early 90s, they were already developing Speed Racer. And the Logan's Run remake at Warner Brothers, I mean, Bryan Singer was this close to making that. That was going to be the movie he was going to make after Superman Returns. They previs the whole movie, and Chris McQuarrie's draft of Logan's Run was going to be the one that was used. But Logan's Run had been developed for a long time. So what ends up happening is the studio, I guess they have in perpetuity the rights to Logan's Run. They've locked those rights up. They've spent millions of dollars writing different Logan's Run scripts over the last, 25 years. They have had, if you look at go back and do a cursory search of say, Variety or Hollywood Reporter and read how many people have been involved in developing Logan's Run. When you read, like, Nicholas Winding Refn comes on board, they pay him. You know, there's it ain't show friends, it's show business. So what ends up happening is Warner Brothers has millions of dollars against that project already. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that over the last, 20 years, Warner Brothers has spent $10 million developing Logan's Run with different directors and different writers. Now, please don't take that number to the bank. That's a pretty high number. Maybe they've only spent $1 million or $2 million, but just for the sake of argument, they've spent 10. Let's just say they've spent 10. I have no idea how much Warner Brothers has spent. Let me just get that straight. But For that project, Warner Brothers is out $10 million. That's what they've spent. So if they ever try to go and then make Logan's Run, they might not use any of those scripts. They might start over with a new writer-director from scratch. But what they're going to have to do is if they pull the trigger on the movie, they're going to have to then get remunerated for the money they've spent. So part of the budget would be that $10 million. They would add that $10 million into the production budget of the film because they have to cover, those are the development costs. So they might not use the scripts, but they have to pay for them. Now, if they do use, they own those scripts. They paid to have them. They could use any one of those scripts at any time and make it into a movie if they wanted to. Now, that means they would have to, it depends, was the writer already paid? Was that writer, if they don't bring out another writer, whoever was writing that script, hopefully they have a good contract with no reversionary clause, which means that the Warner Brothers, if they don't make it, they pay the writer and it's a one-time only thing and he leaves, and then after 5 years the script rights revert back. It's whatever it ain't show friends. It's whatever you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. But let's just say for the sake of argument that they're going to use that writer's script. He probably gets a production bump, and then he would get whatever his negotiated fee was from what he's making in terms of the script or something like that. So all of that will be taken care of. But yes, a studio that develops a property, and they usually own outright what they've paid for. That doesn't mean they don't still owe writers things if they go forward. But if a script is 20 years old, they can go do that. And scripts that are that old sometimes do get made. Usually everybody wants a new pass on them. I mean, one of the things, I think my favorite thing that I've read recently was that 2018 article about Ridley Scott saying what you don't want to do is get into a development deal, because then the movie that you really want to make is now going to go be developed by the studio, and you're going to get noted. You're going to get studio notes. You'll get noted to death. Everything will change, and you don't get to make the movie that you originally got excited about. So, and everybody has a different point of view, and you're dealing with Ivy League educated business people that, they don't necessarily love stories, so they start giving you general notes based on ideas from everything as opposed to specific things that are tailored just to your story. Well, movies today need this kind of a protagonist or whatever. But yeah, so I guess this is really a long-winded conversation. Now, I know from the last couple of weeks, there have been a couple people that I really admire have written into me based on things I've said on the show. So if anyone could offer me more insight into this kind of a topic, please do so, because I do not know everything. I am not some oracle of Delphi of the entertainment business. I am not. And look, I wish I had these problems so I could tell people more about them, but I don't. However, if anybody would like to correct me or add to this, please do so, because I like to be corrected. And again, a heavy hitter, a really heavy hitter, somebody I really admire who's doing some very exciting things and has been for the last couple decades, did write into me to make a correction, and it was very much appreciated. So thank you for that. This next letter comes from John. And John says, Rob, I don't normally do this, but I have to respond to Eric Kochi's letter around the half-hour mark of Robservations Season 2, Episode 512. I admit I am steamy after hearing the contents of that letter, but out of respect to you and the community you have built, I will endeavor to be as polite and amicable as possible towards a fellow member of our community. John, you and I park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay, and I very much appreciate this kind of attitude. Thank you so much. I'm going to break down what this person sent piece by piece. Unfortunately, I do realize it takes time to put up letters on the website, so I can only go by your reading on the show. Let's address the foreword you put out for Cuties. Cuties, that's right. There was in fact an uproar over the marketing that took place by Netflix, absolutely. It seems a rather strange decision in the abstract given the French marketing that was used. I agree with that too. At the time, I was willing to give it a chance, but after speaking with a friend in France about the movie, he told me some things he'd read in French media that disturbed me, regardless of context. Unfortunately, all of these things that he and I discussed at the time are in the movie. I don't want this letter to transform into speaking in detail about the film, as that would take away from my purpose. Eric opens with a complaint about Dance Moms. Personally, this is a show that I've never heard of or seen prior to Eric bringing it up. A quick Google search indicated that the show started in 2011, which is likely well before any of the YouTubers he described even started their channels. Eric moves on to Little Miss Sunshine. The movie came out in 2006, months before Google even bought YouTube. I don't know how old Doomcock or Gary is, Nerdrotic, Gary Beekler, but I'm fairly certain that that Star Wars girl was at some level of primary school in 2006 as I was. The point I am making here is that it should not be a surprise to anyone that commentators of the day have a recency bias. You can't watch or know about everything, and when something is in the news, people talk about it. Eric then leaps to a completely unfounded point about the discrimination comparing the race, sex, and national identity of the people involved in the two preview works up against Cuties. He doesn't just suggest that it could be the case. He flat out accuses Doomcock, Nerdrotic, that Star Wars girl, a person of color herself, and anyone else who had any criticism of the movie of all of these things. This is disgusting behavior. And it wasn't right when it was leveled at you, Rob, over the Twitter controversy earlier in the year, and it isn't right now. Eric reminds us that he has free speech too, but apparently some people don't believe in it if it's problematic. I don't even understand what he's trying to get at here. His letter is being read out by Rob, which he couldn't know if Rob would do so, but that's Rob's prerogative. I certainly haven't infringed on his right here, nor has any of the content creators he speaks of. He asks, who decides what is problematic? Well, I tend to agree with him here. In terms of speech and discussion, I loathe the term problematic, as I've seen it used many times to stifle discussion online and attempt to paint opponents as bigots. This is ironic, because immediately after he asks this, he goes on about sexism and xenophobia and it not okay to speak about those things. Has he ever been on Twitter? It might be for the best if he hasn't. But people do that on social media every single day, for good and for bad. Eric finishes his letter saying something about a post-truth era and judging enablers of hate, racism, and sexism. With all due respect to another member of our community, I don't trust your definition of any of these things. You asked earlier, who decides what is problematic, but you seem to have already made a judgment that future generations will supposedly follow. The last thing Eric says is that my conscience is clear. Well, Rob, after writing this and rereading my work, mine is too. I think I've done the critique I set out to do without resorting to personal attacks of character, unlike what Eric implied of your fellow content creators. I may have written this somewhat in anger, but I hope it lives up to a substantive rebuttal of that letter. It has been infuriating to watch the mainstream media's response to this controversy being to paint all critics of the film online as right-wing QAnon. If you ask me why I don't trust the media, that's another log on the fire, unless one actually believes that description fits Rose McGowan, Tulsi Gabbard, and Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Christine Pelosi. I, too, hope for an end of the post-truth era, and hopefully, one day, some Star Trek I can be proud of again. That's another letter, though. Yours, John. Well, John, I have to say, if nothing else, this is exactly the kind of discourse that I hope that we can have here on the channel. That's what I like. And, no personal attacks. I thought that this letter was a great letter. And, I appreciate what you had to say. Now, I'm constantly... People are constantly going after me for even talking to Doomcock, going on Midnight's Edge, talking to Gary Beekler, even doing stuff with Az, the Prisoner Show. But as I have told people, all of them without exception have treated me with great respect. I have never been mistreated. And I feel like I was definitely on maybe a different side of cuties than they were. But we weren't going after each other online, although Gary did bring up some good points to me directly on Twitter. And I like the fact that if Gary Beekler and I might be on different sides of an issue, that Gary Beekler will approach me with respect. And he can state what he wants to state, and I don't say, fuck you, dude. I like Gary Beekler. He's a father. He's a husband. He's out there on YouTube every day sticking his neck out. You know, being on YouTube and being on social media is basically sticking your head in a guillotine. It really is. And people have to be very, very careful what they say. And look, my brand is positivity. That's and because I'm genuinely positive. Have I done fucked up bad things in the past that I regret? Have I run out on things that I shouldn't have run out on? I have not led a perfect life. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the one thing that I have to sell, the thing that I can sell the most, well, I'd like to think my knowledge, which is only getting greater every day, but my enthusiasm and my genuine love of doing the work. That's what I love. I love to do the work. And I never thought of myself as, I'm coming up, this December will be my 2-year anniversary of doing this show. And I think it's really important that I have reached out. I mean, I don't go after other YouTubers. There are people on Twitter that come after me every day that really, mostly they're Star Trek fans and that's fine, but I'm not going to go back and attack them personally because why would I do that? But I think it's really important. This letter, John, this is exactly the kind of thing that we should be doing on this channel, is having these kinds of discussions. And, I want to thank you for this kind of letter. I also want to thank you for setting this example. And thank you very much for taking the time to write a thoughtful letter and also treating your fellow imagination connoisseurs with respect. So thank you very, very much. This next letter is from Duncan Norris. Dear Rob, well, time for another review. A doubleheader this time of Korean zombie films. In an effort to be making less of a dick move with these reviews, I've chosen one film that is out on streaming so people without access to these theaters can check it out if they're interested. The first film is Peninsula, and as it is a sequel, I think very few words about the original movie are in order. That film is the much-hyped Train to Busan. I loved Train to Busan. I loved everything about it. I love zombie movies, but I was zombied out. Train to Busan, it brought me right back. Train to Busan and The Girl with All the Gifts, two of my favorite zombie movies I've seen in a long time. Now, when it originally came out, I avoided it despite all the good buzz it had, but I figured it was a case of something getting praised for the novelty of being a zombie film, but in Korea. When I finally got around to watching it, I realized how wrong I was. I loved it. And as this letter isn't a review of that film, I'll simply say, highly recommended. Just thought it was important to reference my state of mind and expectations going into its sequel. Peninsula is, I think, a victim of Train to Busan's success on the international stage. There is a clear attempt to make it more marketable to English speakers with lots of dialogue, especially in the early scenes, in English. Whilst not an issue intrinsically, nothing about this setup seems particularly natural or organic to the film. Peninsula is also a much bigger film, visually speaking, but has at times the unreal imagery of a high-quality video game cutscene, and is dark to the point of annoyance in moments. I'll attempt to avoid anything like a spoiler, but the basic gist of the film is desperate people have to go into an infected zone to gather loot for shady characters. It's not a bad film in any way, and it has a few good ideas and occasionally great moments, but overall it's just another quite well-made, decent-budget zombie film. Peninsula is all the things I incorrectly suspected Train to Busan would be. Its plot and moments feel very familiar. The characters are mostly horribly broad archetypes. Everyone is either a genius or a raging idiot, as the plot demands. The villains are from hackneyed screenwriting 101, and the influences are patent to the point when they lose the status of homage or influence and become rip-off. Now, I want to clarify that Peninsula is not a bad film. It is, well, just another zombie film. Enjoyable, but easily forgotten after watching. By contrast, Alive is a very small, intimate zombie film with a very simple premise. A young man, more by chance than anything else, survives in his apartment during a zombie apocalypse. It's all about him, his day-to-day struggles and needs, his limited understanding of events and trying to cope. There is none of the all-fight-em-all bravado or becoming a master in this brave new world one commonly finds in these sorts of films. Just a rather realistic look about what happens to one not particularly bright or adept in the most unrealistic circumstance. This is not to imply that it's a zombie art film or some such. It's an action horror movie, but just slower and less frantic, more focused on one person's story. Again, no spoilers, for there are twists and turns in this one, but Alive is far more enjoyable, fresh, and original than the far bigger and bombastic Peninsula. As a formality, I should mention both of these films are, of course, largely in Korean with subtitles, but with Alive in particular, there are not huge amounts of dialogue and a lot more of relying of simply watching and absorbing the events. So in short, Alive is a far better film, but both are certainly worth watching and worthy entries in the genre. Till next time, I remain your obedient servant, Duncan. Well, again, Duncan, I really appreciate you sending this letter in. I have to say, I was really looking forward to Peninsula. I loved Train to Busan, but as more and more footage was released and trailers were released, you know, one of the things about Train to Busan that I loved was peak verisimilitude. You know, I mean, you know, I'm always looking out for peak verisimilitude, and I think one of the great joys, especially because I've always loved Asian culture and Asian people growing up. One of the things that I love about Korean, Chinese, Japanese films, and now there's other films from the region as well, one of the things I've always loved is the insight, like when you watch a John Woo movie, like whether it's The Killer or whether it's Hard Boiled or whether it's Bullet in the Head or A Better Tomorrow or something like that, one of the interesting things to watch about movies that come from different countries is if you're watching a cop thriller, how they treat these things differently than we do in America. And one of the things I've always loved about John Woo movies is the melodrama. You know, people would say, "Oh, you're slow motion," or you're the doves that are let go in scenes." But I love that because you wouldn't see that in an American movie. And one of the things that happened when they brought John Woo over to direct in America, because John Woo, of course, as Hollywood is wont to do, you know, John Woo movies in the 90s, in the early 90s especially, were passed around. And, I mean, there was a fervor. Everybody was watching The Killer and Hard Boiled. And I went to a screening at the New Art. And I want to say that was the first time I saw Hard Boiled. I think it was. But John Woo was actually there. And it was a raucous, packed house. And we were there to see The Killer and Hard Boiled. You know, in Hard Boiled, they talked about the legendary, 45-minute tracking shot through the hot... Well, whatever. It wasn't that long. But it's... Hard Boiled is fucking badass. If you haven't seen John Woo's Hard Boiled, what are you waiting for? I mean, from the beginning, the tea house with everybody's got the birds in the cages and they've got guns hidden. I mean, it's... You know, but nobody in America would make that movie. So when they brought John Woo to America, his first American film was Hard Target. Now, another thing that was floating around is there is a director's cut of Hard Target. And as everyone who's seen it will tell you, and I used to have it, I misplaced my VHS tape. I had a copy of the director's cut of Hard Target. That's the Jean-Claude Van Damme. As a matter of fact, somebody asked me what my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie was, and I should have said the director's cut of Hard Target is my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. But what's really interesting about that film, and especially if you watch the director's cut, it's a John Woo movie. There's all kinds of Lance Henriksen's floating jacket in slow motion when he shows up. I mean, it's John Woo. And what the studio did was when they recut the movie, they turned it into a much more generic action movie. And I'm sure, I mean, this is what happens. This is what happens. And I'll tell you a story again. Since it's on. So I was a reader at William Morris, and Chris Godsick was he's producing now, but he was John Woo's agent. And I remember that they sent out, I don't know if I got a message. So I would go to William Morris, and I had a drawer. My little drawer. I didn't have an office. I just had a drawer. So I would go and open my little drawer, and there were scripts that I had to do coverage on. And coverage, for those of you who don't know, you read a script and then you write a page of synopsis, and then you basically write a page of notes and recommendation or whatever. And then you give it a recommendation, yes, no, maybe. So they had asked, I guess, the readers, I got a memo about John Woo. John Woo's new at the agency. Is there anybody who knows anything about John Woo? I'm like, fuck yeah, what do you want to know? And so I was reading all of Chris Godsick's submissions that they thought John Woo would be good for. I get the script for Judge Dredd. not Dredd. I'm talking the Judge Dredd that Sylvester Stallone made. And it came from Ed Pressman's office. Now, Ed Pressman, again, I was a big fan of Ed Pressman. I mean, he, produced like The Crow. He was a genre guy, and he would get great material. He knew great material. So I was sent William Wisher's draft of Judge Dredd. Now, the thing about Judge Dredd is, and John Woo, the first thing that ran through my mind is that Mega City 1 is like Hong Kong. I mean, John Woo is from Mega City. I mean, it's not perhaps as lawless, but the idea that people are living on top of one another and all that, and it started out with the block wars that was big in the comics. I'm like, he's the perfect director. John Woo is the perfect director for this movie. And it was Judge Dredd, and I was a huge fan. One of the first comics that I bought and read all of was when Eagle Comics back in the early 80s were bringing Judge Dredd to. As a matter of fact, I don't have it here, but I just found a bunch of my Eagle Judge Dredd comics because I want to get them slabbed. But it was like Strontium Dog and DR and Quinch and all that. So I had all of the Judge Dredd comics, and I just love Judge Dredd, the Judge Child quest. I loved it. So I wrote this book report, this really long book report explaining why John Woo. First of all, it was a whole thing, explanation of what Judge Dredd was and why John Woo is the perfect director for this movie. I'm totally off topic here, but I've told the story before, but I'll just tell it now. So, and then I wrote coverage on the script, which I really liked. It was not. Again, the tone of Judge Dredd, the script was very different than what the Stallone movie ended up being. So, and I just, I turned it in. I figured, here was my thought process. I figured I love Judge Dredd. I wanted to see Judge Dredd get made. And it was apparent to me that nobody knew what Judge Dredd was at William Morris. It just said Judge Dredd on it. People had no idea. They had no clue. Nobody, and this is not to pillory people at William Morris. This was back in the mid-90s. Nobody knew. Who's going to know? Who's going to know what Judge Dredd is? But this was problematic. This was something that I saw as problematic. Like I could sit there and wax rhapsodic about Judge Dredd and explain why John Woo would be a great director for this. So anyway, I wrote this book report. It was like 20 pages. I still have it, by the way, somewhere. So I put it in the script, and that was it. And then what you do is back then I had floppy disks, and I would, with my coverage on it. So then I had to give out a printout and then put the disc in. So I put it back in my drawer, and then they would take my coverage out and whatever and distribute it where it needed to go. It's like 2 weeks later, I get a kind of an irate call from Karen Glasser, who was the head of the story department that I was working for. She's just like, Rob, we do appreciate your enthusiasm, but when we give you a script to read, we just want to know if the script is good or not. And I'm like, yes. Well, apparently the book report, my Judge Dredd book report, found its way back to Ed Pressman's office. And they were, because of this very effusive piece of writing that I had done on the joys of Judge Dredd and why John Woo should direct this movie, they were under the impression at Ed Pressman's office that William Morris was now going to package the movie. Package means William Morris is going to get behind it and get their talent, not just John Woo, but apparently actors or whatever, and package the film, turn it into a package and take that package out to the studios or whatever the hell they were going to do. And that, of course, backfired on William Morris. Ed Pressman was like, great, I guess. It's people like, awesome. William Morris is going to package Judge Dredd. They want to make it. All because I wrote this. Well, I didn't know. I mean, look, if I had never written that memo, perhaps, then nothing would have happened. But I felt it was my obligation because having worked at Warner Brothers and having been a reader at Silver Pictures, there's sometimes, especially in that environment, nowadays, most of this stuff is known. There's very little IP property that there's I think books people don't know, but there's more and more material now. Why do you think things like the Foundation trilogy are getting made? Because people like myself who are deeply ensconced in the industry are finally going back and getting their favorite material. Like, look, there's a Japanese manga comic called Mai the Psychic Girl. And I remember, I want to say, was it 30 years ago? There's the band called Sparks. I've got angst in my pants. From the 80s. the band Sparks somehow was involved, and they were going to write the soundtrack, and Tim Burton was going to direct this adaptation of the manga Mai the Psychic Girl. I loved Mai the Psychic Girl. It kicked ass. I loved it. Funny, I've been going through my comics because I'm going to get rid of them all. At this point, at one point, I'm going to take all my long boxes and just stick them out on the side of the road. And I'm just going to put up a sign that says free comics. Here's thousands of comics. You take them. I will have cherry-picked the things that I want to slab and sell and keep. But I'm about at that point. But my Mai the Psychic Girl comics, I'm like, oh, I can't part with these. But it's something that should get made. Now, I'm totally off topic. But my point was, the point I was trying to make is what happened to Peninsula, which, again, I haven't seen, Train to Busan, is that it is a victim of its own success. The whole point about Train to Busan is it was successful and people loved it because it was as much about Korea as it was about zombies. And when you watch a film from a country, when I watch a Japanese movie, like The World of, it's either Kaneko or Kaneko. When I watch The World of Kaneko, and you should all, if you like Quentin Tarantino and crime thrillers, watch The World of Kaneko. I mean, it might be Tarantino-esque, but what makes it so special and what makes it worth watching is the Japanese-ness of it all. Because you don't want to watch the Japan... Like, one of the things I don't think The Wandering Earth is a great movie. But what I like about it is there's so much Chinese in it. You know, it's like the Chinese are trying to make a movie that appeals to global audiences by emulating more westernized movies, but it's still like it's still very Chinese, and that's why I loved it. I mean, I don't think it's a great movie. I mean, it's a huge box office hit in China because China doesn't have a lot of science fiction films. You know, I get it, but that's what I loved growing up. I felt like I was getting a window into a culture that I didn't get to see every day, and that's why I loved Japanese science fiction so much, or Chinese science fiction. You know, like I loved Inframan, the Shaw Brothers Inframan, the Super Inframan. I mean, because it was, you're seeing something unique and pure, and it's not trying to emulate something else. And of course, Train to Busan makes a lot of money, so the Koreans are like, well, we want to make another worldwide hit, so let's make Peninsula and let's inject more of Michael Bay, more of that worldwide action, which is a mistake. It's a mistake. And that's one of the things. I mean, the like I was talking about, the J horror boom of the early aughts. When The Ring came, and I talked about how, if you think about it, come on, or what I loved about Japanese ghost stories, or Spiral. What is that? Uzumaki? Is it Uzumaki that was Spiral? And Kyushu Kurosawa's Pulse. Man, I love Pulse. By the way, Arrow put that out on video. The American remake is terrible. But if you watch Kyushu Kurosawa's Pulse, and by the way, if you want to watch another really great movie, watch Kyushu Kurosawa's Cure. That's another great Japanese sort of serial killer, very interesting films. And Pulse and Cure would make a great double feature if you want to watch. But the idea that, if something bad happens in a house or something, like in The Grudge, you don't get to clean that house. I mean, that spirit's there forever. You're fucked. And I like that idea. I mean, Americans, we don't have the whole deal with our ancestors overlooking us, but they do. And if you do something wrong, they're going to get you, But then again, we have the Old West. So we have, all civilizations have their different things that they talk about. But the fun thing is to explore, when you see other cultures' films. But anyway, what I was going to say is, ultimately, they fucked John Woo by cutting Hard Target. Fuck you, Universal. You should have let his first cut of the movie go out. It would have been much more successful. And then so would Broken Arrow wouldn't have been fucked with in the Edit Bay either. And it wasn't until we got Face Off that we got the true first American John Woo movie. And it was glorious. If you like that kind of thing. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. I am so off the reservation now. But hey, what do you want? What do you want from me? It's Robservations. Here you go. I can only tell you what I can tell you. This next letter comes from Darren McKinnon. Hey, Rob, it's me again, tucked away all the way up here in New Brunswick, Canada. Listening to you invite people to participate in your film festival has got me thinking. For those of you who are new to the channel, that's correct, ladies and gentlemen. We are having the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Entry forms will be available October 1st. The deadline to enter is December 1st, and it's going to be fun. So basically, I'm giving all of you imagination connoisseurs, you ever wanted to make a movie? I've always said on this show, everybody at one time or another should try making a movie. Well, I'm not putting my money where my mouth is. I'm just putting my mouth where it's always been, which is open, yapping away for too long. But I'm inviting everybody to spend the next 2 months between October and December and make a movie. And we're going to celebrate all you imagination connoisseurs. So if you've ever thought about making a movie, now's the time. Get on it, son, as John Schnepp used to say. I have no idea if some project will manifest itself in my mind, but I love the idea. I know some people will get the creative juices flowing. Maybe I'll come up with something, maybe not. But this whole thing has got me thinking about the past and projects I participated in. The first batch of projects, and the more recent despite being almost 10 years old, are puppet movies my friends and I made. By the way, I encourage you can make puppet movies. Hand puppets. I just think there's something funny with puppets. Mr. Slauson. Oh, that's mannequins. That was a little tourist trap for you. We bought a few small camcorders. I know, old school for even a decade ago, and just shot stuff. We didn't know what we were doing or what we wanted at the start. It was basically just a series of puppets doing banal stuff. Banal stuff. In retrospect, I guess we were all just getting a feel for everything. And honestly, it was so much fun. Sometimes we would take hours to have a puppet accomplish something simple. We stayed up late and over and over and over and over, we tried to get a puppet walk up to a garbage can and have him, yes, him, our puppets all had names and personalities, throw out a banana peel. The clip lasted a few seconds and probably took over an hour to shoot. We would just come up with an idea that we thought was fun and we shot it. Sometimes it was simple. Other times it was exhausting. But it was a good kind of exhaustion. We were creating something almost entirely for the sake of creation. Granted, some people saw these clips and enjoyed them, and even developed favorite characters of ours, but we basically did this out of a need to do something fun. And it was. As time went by, our puppets developed personalities. I hope this letter isn't going to a dark place. One puppet I voiced and performed was named Spencer, and he became a character I totally disassociated from myself, which is weird. Not only did our characters develop, but the nature of what we shot changed. I brought Spencer with me as I traveled. We shot travel videos. He came to Iceland, Norway, the Yukon, and he even went to a Comic-Con in Montreal. These were often difficult. I was sometimes puppeteer and cameraman at the same time. We also had puppets driving cars in some clips. We had a movie about puppets making a movie. That puppet-directed movie within our movie made no sense at all. It was great. We shot a movie trailer for a puppet horror movie that doesn't exist. We even shot a 42-second clip that took over 10 hours to shoot. It was the opening credits to the Golden Girls with puppets. Looking back at this, it was crazy, but awesome. Watching some of these clips now, some are on YouTube, I see they could have been way better. The lighting, the audio, the acting. But there was a certain level of audacity and not really caring behind those things that we did. I think that's part of their charm. We just did it. I also look back at these things and feel good thinking how fun it was shooting this weirdness with a small group of friends. Hours and hours spent shooting cloth on our hands. The bloopers we have are probably just as fun as satisfying as the real clips. But I don't think you would have expected a letter about puppets. But nonetheless, here it is. But now please allow me to mention another project I was involved in that I think you will appreciate. The small city where I live, Monton, New Brunswick, is officially bilingual. That's Moncton. Moncton? There's an art scene here, mostly spearheaded by French-speaking people, francophones. And for over 30 years, there's been a French-language film festival here, FICFA. The translation of that acronym means International French Cinema Festival in Acadia. Acadia, or Acadie, in French is a term used to describe the French-speaking population of this part of the country. But historically, Acadia is the name for the former French colony that spanned what is today roughly the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. Man, I want to come party with you guys. One of the events that was held during this festival was what was called the a Caddy Underground? The idea was that they gave you an old 8mm camera and a 3-minute roll of film. You had to shoot in sequence with no editing. Whatever you shot is what you got. Lighting, acting, and timing was critical. If you ran out of film, too bad. This, oh my God, I love this. Because that's how I began my filmmaking career with my Minolta XL601 shooting 3-minute cartridges of film. My friend Chris participated 3 years in a row and asked me to act in them. We won 3 years in a row. The only 3 years we entered. Now that may sound impressive, but allow me to tell you that the way this competition was run, it was very informal and mostly for fun. The jury was the assembled audience, and everyone in attendance had to vote for their favorite film. So Chris and I knew a lot of people. But I do think our 3-minute no-editing shot and sequence clips were fun. Those 3-minute films were simple but hard to shoot. Those 3 minutes sometimes took 2 days to complete. Was it tiresome? Yes. Was it fun? Very much so. My friend Chris has since moved away, but sometimes we say that if we were still in the same city, we would most likely be cooperating on something. I miss those days. So for the time being, I let my mind wander and I see if I can come up with a narrative to squeeze together and maybe shoot and send to you. Maybe. Please take care, Darren McKinnon. God damn it, Darren, if I don't get a puppet movie from you, you're banned from the channel. No, I'm just kidding. You know what? I kind of think that now every single person that watches this channel will be disappointed if you don't send a puppet movie in to the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. By the way, I also want to point out that this film festival is the very first film festival on the planet Earth ever that is open to extraterrestrial entries. So we want everyone to know that might be out there. If you've listened to that Voyager record and played the music and Greetings from Earth and all that, you are welcome to enter this film festival. And I encourage anyone, if there really are David Icke lizard people listening, they might be indigenous to this planet, I'm not really sure. If there are any time travelers, if the people that excavated the ships that Bob Lazar worked on, I don't care. If you are indeed an extraterrestrial that is visiting Earth or you are studying Earth, I want it to be known that this film festival, this is an intergalactic film festival, and you are welcome. As a matter of fact, whatever the entry fee is going to be, if it's $20 or $25, I will waive the entry fee for you if you can, give me irrefutable proof that you are indeed an extraterrestrial. And if for some reason you can't give me proof, but want to claim you're an extraterrestrial, I hope your movie reflects the fact that I would expect you to have the best filmmaking technology around, which means your movie should probably be pretty spectacular. So, there you go. Darren, thank you for writing this letter. What a great letter this is. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, let me jump over to see what you guys are saying. What are you guys saying today? I want to thank Willow Yang, who usually always sends in a tip in the beginning, so I can always start with her. But there's been a few. I noticed that there was a few that I did not. Let's see. Here we got. Damo Davies first says, Damo Davies said, sorry I've not tipped in a while. No longer under threat of redundancy in these uncertain times, so expect a few more questions. Greetings from the UK. Listen. You're under no obligation to tip or super chat at all. Everybody's welcome. I do appreciate it, though. And I just like having you all here. You don't have to... there are people sometimes that tell me that they feel bad that they don't tip or send in super chats. I never want people to feel that. If people want to contribute to the channel, if they like what I'm doing, it is very much appreciated. But it is not necessary. If you want to hang out here all you want and you never want to tip or you never want to super chat, that's okay, too. I just like that people are coming to the channel and that our audience is building. I mean, we're barreling toward 30,000 subscribers and we're barreling toward 3 million views, which is incredible. And that's all thanks to you guys. I know. Everyone, people are like, well, your friends at, I get this, your friends at Midnight's Edge or Doomcock or the people you work with, they have much more subscribers than you have. I'm like, yeah, because they've been doing it for a long time. I mean, I don't begrudge them that, but I think it's great. And for me to get to 30,000 subscribers, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And that's all due to you guys, you kind souls, gentle beings, however you identify, whoever you are. It's part of having you here. So Damo Davies goes on and says, I know you are not a huge fan on the X-Files, but I am. I am a huge X-Files fan. What did you think of the Season 3 episode, Jose Chung's From Outer Space? I absolutely love this episode, and I think it's a great deconstruction of the sci-fi genre, and it is an absolute riot. Darren Morgan wrote that episode. Jose Chung's From Outer Space is one of the great, first of all, it's one of the great episodes of X-Files, and there's an argument to be made that they could have ended the series with that episode. It might have been the equivalent of, well, the ending of The Prisoner. I'm a huge fan. I love that episode. And, look, I think I loved the X-Files, but the X-Files was, I think, the X-Files and Lost. I mean, Lost was after the X-Files, but the X-Files was a great example of a show that it was creating a mythology that it didn't understand. They were making it up as they went along, and they got to the point where literally the mythology episodes started to collapse under their own weight because nobody figured out. I mean, here's one of the things I'll tell you about X-Files that always pissed me off. So the X-Files premise is that, okay, aliens are real, extraterrestrials are real, and somehow there's a consortium, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, the committee of human beings that are somehow in cahoots and know what is going on with these extraterrestrials. They're able to plan for things. They meet with them. But there's all this crazy stuff that happened, like there's an alien bounty hunter who has a weird weapon. So, like, that would assume that someone hired the alien bounty hunter. So these aliens where are they? Now, in the X-Files movie, there's a flying saucer underneath the Arctic and all that. But, how do you get under there? It's clearly there's no one else in there. So they never really figured out what was going on with these aliens, where they were they from Earth, were they not from Earth? And the X-Files movie, I thought, didn't do the X-Files any favors. So it was all nonsensical. And then they moved away from the aliens and more toward these super soldiers that were made with alien technology. And there's religious iconography because of Scully's pregnancy. So there's all this stuff that was going on that just didn't come together. And I think that's unfortunate. Like, if they had a place where they were going, like the actual invasion was going to come, then in Millennium, they're like, oh my God, the Millennium's coming, and that was lame. They just didn't do a very good job paying all that off because they didn't know. And if you watch I remember watching the first season of X-Files, and they do some really, really interesting stuff. There's a lot of, like, what is it, Gender Bender? Is that the name of the episode from the first season, when the flying saucer at the end? And I loved all that. I mean, I love the X-Files. Some of the X-Files episodes weren't as good as others, and I remember the last episode of the first season, the Erlenmeyer Flask, that was mind-blowing, and that's really what kicked off the mythology in earnest. But I loved X-Files. It just spun off the rails and let me down. Willow writes in and says, in response to Eric's letter yesterday, I think that Stormfront, that would be Stormfront from The Boys, couldn't have put it better. You don't need 50 million people to love you. You need 5 million people fucking pissed. Emotion sells. Anger sells. You have fans. I have soldiers. Well, Willow, I think you have a good point there. And, I think that if Netflix wanted to generate publicity for cuties, they did. So, interesting. I mean, I know people like hashtag. I've saw people in my feed, I cut the cord with Netflix. There's people that did that. I'm sure there's just as many people that joined. You're absolutely right. Willow goes on to say, the title of Taika Waititi's Our Flag Means Death. Taika Waititi is doing I guess he's directing the pilot for a new pirate show that's based on a real aristocrat from a storied family, a Tiffany family that ends up becoming a pirate based on a true story, which who wouldn't watch that? The title of Taika Waititi, A Flag Means Death, reminded me of a recent conversation I had with my mom when she saw this baseball team that had a Jolly Roger flag. Mom, why do they have a skull on their flag? Me, it's a pirate flag. Willow goes on. Mom, Chinese people will never have images of skulls. It's bad luck. It means that you're going to become a skull. Me, well, to pirates it means that their enemies are going to become skulls. Mom, they're cursing themselves. You know what? I've had experience in the past with Chinese moms, and let me tell you, I don't think there's anything more precious in life than to have a Chinese mother, especially like you have one. It's the greatest thing in the world. They're not just a constant source of amusement and wisdom, but No one can love you like a Chinese mom can. So congratulations on that, Willow. Tell your mom hello for me. Give her a great big hug. That same human sends in a tip and says, Rob, after Hereditary, I thought I'd give Midsummer a watch. Not sure if it's a 2-hour and 28-minute documentary on how being a Chad can backfire, or it's a warning to not do drugs in an open field with a group of strangers you don't know in an unstable relationship. You might be very right about that. You know, Midsummer, I was not a big fan of Midsummer. Ari Aster, I don't know. Jury's still out. I have to see a third film. We'll see. The Squish Show says, count me in on the film festival. All right, Squish Show. I will expect to see you. Again, the forums and all of the rules will be available on the Burnettwork website on the October 1st. Ricky Burnett says, if I search and search and am unable to find answers on Google on how to do something to make the movie, can I ask for assistance from the chat? I have zero experience other than how to Google. Ricky, bring it on, son. Ask the chat, Google. I mean, there's all kinds of books you can get. I look forward to it. And by the way, I don't think just because you have no experience making movies, if you have no experience at all, just think about this. Think about this. Like, if you're let's say you're going to use your phone to make a movie. You've never made a movie before. Phones usually have, I mean, I would say use microphones and all that, but if you've never made a movie before, just think about this. When you look through your camera and you're framing a shot, does it look like a shot you would have seen on television or in the movies? Does it look like that shot? And I mean, if you have a frame like this and someone's head's right there, that's not right. You know, you keep or do this. Here's my advice for beginners. Whenever you're framing, say, a person, make sure that the top of their head just either touches or is just below the top of the frame. And if you can do variations on that, but that's where I would start. Like, people want to put faces in the middle. Don't do that. Use the whole frame. Make sure that a person's head is just on the top, just either touching the top of the frame or just a little bit below. And make sure every shot with a person's kind of like that. You can experiment, but you'll love yourself when you're done. And there you go. I would talk to you about the 180-degree rule and editorial, but that would be a little tough. Stubble McShave is here, and he says, it's great that production is starting up, but will Risk Group cast and crew get insurance? Who will sign the insurance for Will at-risk group cast members and crew get insurance? Who will sign the insurance for Anthony Hopkins or Ridley Scott, and how costly would those insurances be? That's a really good question. I mean, Stubble McShave is referring to actors and directors. I mean, Ridley Scott's in his 80s. I don't know Anthony Hopkins. I don't know how old he is, but they are at risk. They're at a higher risk for COVID. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume the insurance might be more. But whenever you have to get a physical when you go before you direct. You have to get a physical. And they have to, so you can get bonded. And I don't know if they'll do that, but hey. Brian Sutter sends in a super chat and says, unpopular opinion, The Terminator is better than Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Brian, you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. The Terminator is better than Terminator 2. Not that Terminator 2 isn't good, but I like the Terminator better. Just like I like Evil Dead way better than I like Evil Dead 2. And people know I did work. I have a screen credit on Evil Dead 3, which is, of course, Army of Darkness. But yeah. I like that better. I'm with you 100%. I like X-Men better than X-Men 2. Duck. Boink Boink 0305 sends in a tip and says, Hear, hear, to John's letter that you just read. It's hard to hear you defend the not-to-be-named Netflix movies, but I'm still here. Again, I haven't seen it. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, Bond films are 26 films in and not one box office flop in the bunch. Technically, they're not. The official Bond saga, this would be No Time to Die, is the 25th Bond film. Never Say Never Again doesn't count because it's not part of the Broccoli family's version, and nor does the spoof Casino Royale. So No Time to Die is, in fact, the 25th Bond film. I don't mean to be a dick and correct you, but since you wrote it down, I'm being a dick and correcting you. Bond films are 26 films in and not one box office flop in the bunch. What an amazing record. Star Wars Solo or the MCU Hulk can't make that boast. Well, Hulk, now the MCU, all their movies average out $1 billion if you do it that way. Hulk benefited the most. But I agree with you. I mean, all the Bond films have made money. They've all made money. I mean, things like License to Kill might not have made as much money, but they've all made money. They made that movie cheap. So, yeah. Alexander Wilson said that Gary and Doomcock said Watchmen and Black Panther were racist against white people. I was denied a job just because I was black. They're disingenuous when they say garbage like that. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with them. I don't believe that's the case. I don't think that Watchmen and Black Panther are racist against white people. And here's the thing. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but it's not like white people haven't cost black people a hell of a lot of problems over the last 400 years. And I mean, I think that when you're making movies that deal with that subject matter, you can't help but, cast white people as the villains because they were. They were. Listen, man, like I've said before recently, black men coming back from fighting for this country in World War II were denied the GI Bill. You know what that would have done to black America if they weren't denied the GI Bill? It might have changed the shape of 50 years of American black history. Actually, 70 years now, or 75 years, if you go all the way back to the end of World War II. And that's bad. And, who did that to black soldiers? White people. White people did. So I don't think that it's at all racist when you're delving into topics and you're showing what black Americans or black people from around the world. I mean, it's different around the world. There is slavery. There are slave markets going on right now. People are being sold into slavery in like Libya. There are. I mean, slavery has not gone away. People are still being sold as chattel. There are sexual slaves. Black men are being sold. Africans are being sold still into slavery now. So, yeah, I don't think doing stories that start with the Black Wall Street massacre is racist against white people. I don't think showing a country like Wakanda being technologically advanced and being full of black people as opposed to white people is inherently racist. I think that these are the kind of stories that need to be told. I don't feel that way at all. Now, I'm sure other people can. I get what people are saying when they say that, but I guess it's because I know that there's a lot to criticize with us white folk. There really is. And I don't find it racist when we are being criticized. I think that, look, I don't believe in trading one oppression for another. As you know, I've said it a million times on the show. We have to move forward. We have to evolve together. And there is a strange undercurrent of now we're going to be the masters. And I'm not just talking about for black people. I'm talking about when an oppressed minority gets a voice of some kind, their first experience, not everybody, but the battle lines are drawn. We're going to burn down this civilization. Well, that's not really helpful either. We need to evolve and we have to move together. We move forward together. We have to evolve together. I mean, it is the human race after all. There is one race of people on this planet. There's one race. It's the human race. And we're all going to be better off when we start thinking in those kind of terms. And that each one of us is a rare commodity because we're the only one of us in the entire universe. So when we start thinking of each other as that rare commodity being only one of you, and that we are all part of the same race of people on the same planet. I mean, when you leave the Earth, no one sits there and when we meet aliens, the aliens aren't going to look at you and like go, oh, you're a black person or you're yellow, or you're brown, or you're whatever. The aliens are going to say, you're from Earth. You're part of the human race. They probably won't even notice. I mean, the way they look at us, you might have a rainbow coalition spaceship of people, and the aliens are going to be like, oh, you're all bipeds. That's just, so anyway, I don't feel that way, Alexander. Jason Whitcomb sends in a tip and says, Rob, the only reason the Fandom Menace guys are cordial to you is that you carry some weight in the industry. You're the only person who's worked in the industry who will give them any time and want the credibility. I consider them a hate channel. Well, I don't think that's necessarily fair. I mean, okay, I've worked in the industry, but I'm certainly not a heavy hitter. No one is. I am a journeyman eking out a meager living in the industry. And I mean, that's fair. I mean, but I look at it this way. As a person who builds his channel on the idea that every single person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen, what I'm trying to do is hopefully bring some positivity around to people that I might disagree with. And I mean, a hate channel, perhaps, but maybe I can go. I was on the Friday Night Tights broadcast, and I was trying to bring, my unique stylings, my whatever stylings they are, lifestyle stylings, I don't know what you call them, just a little bit of who I am to different places, and try and lead by example. So I wouldn't call them a hate channel. If they want to exploit me, or you think they're exploiting me, I can understand why you think that, but I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way because as fans, I mean, I've had a lot of off-camera conversations with people, and I've always had a good experience with them. And it's remember, I'm new to YouTube, so when I'm on YouTube now, I mean, I've been on YouTube for 5 years, but I was on other people's shows. And I think it's important that when you, we're all part of a continuum. We're all part of this community, and we're all fans. We're all part of the movie pundits, whatever space. And I like talking to my fellow fans, just like I like talking to other people that I might vehemently disagree with. But if I can have a good conversation with somebody, I feel like, okay, if they disagree with me or we disagree with politics or something, and we can still have good conversations, I think that's you're making an example. Jason says, trust me, if a non-celebrity disagrees with the Fandom Menace group, they are viciously attacked, ganged up on, and all of their little fanboys also attack you. It's pretty nasty. I know you like them, but trust me, they're not nice people. But see, okay, Jason, I can't agree with that. Because I really think it's how we all go about talking to people. Like the letter that we got earlier today from John. If people can talk that way to people they disagree with, talk with respect and make great points, a lot of the time, people come at you. I get people that say really mean, hurtful stuff. Now, it rolls off my back, but to me all the time, and usually because of my stance on modern Star Trek. I mean, people say really hateful shit, and I'm the funny thing to me is I'm more bemused by it than anything else. I'm like, you don't even know me. You don't even know, I have Elizabeth, my girlfriend, and her 2 teenage daughters, and we live in a house and dogs and a cat, and it's, you're a person that tries to do good, but then you get personally attacked online on Twitter and stuff. I find I'm more bemused by it than anything else, because the people that do those kinds of things would never say that to my face, and I just find it funny that they feel empowered on Twitter to do it. But, I guess, I find it more amusing, again, when somebody that I had it happen to me, starts calling me like a racist and a right-winger, which is, to me, is so strange because of literally one tweet that I made that was connected to a video when I was obviously making a point that was, it was more of a punk rock point. It was I was upset that Captain David Dorn, a black former police captain who was the father of 5 and grandfather of 10, was gunned down on a street corner. And the point I was trying to make is where are the Second Amendment aficionados? Where was somebody to protect him? That's what I was saying. But everybody, when my tweet was taken out of context, when it was no longer, it was Screen Captain, it was no longer with the video of Captain David Dorn, it looked like I was some unhinged racist wanting to kill all protesters. It wasn't even about protesters at all. It was about this guy that was murdered defending a pawn shop. And yet suddenly people come after you. And literally, I there was things that I lost because of that, which is interesting that how could people not, they never, and people I work with, they'd never watch my show. People started calling me a trash individual. It was upsetting. It was upsetting. And I apologized because I did say fuck you to somebody I work with. And I felt bad about that. That he did not deserve for me to say that. But I was a little perplexed at why people were coming so hard at me. One tweet, I've tweeted 100,000 times. But anyway, it's the way people disagree with each other. It's the way, if you can have look, people were disagreeing with me. Gary was disagreeing with me over cuties. It's the way you disagree. You can disagree with people, but everybody is so, like, I disagree about Star Trek, and people they come at me with personal attacks. Well, I think that's, if somebody wants to cogently debate my position on modern Star Trek, I'm all for that. But when they turn it around and try and like denigrate me as a human being, then they're not worth listening to. And I think that's what happens. I think we have to, in this fan community, if you disagree with somebody or don't like channels, then disagree with them in a constructive manner. When you resort to personal attacks, you think about, like, I find it interesting as far as Doomcock goes. The guy is as much an entertainer as he is anything else. He's a costumed supervillain that lives in the center of the earth with a Cthulhu puppet that he talks to. It's also supposed to be entertainment. It's like shock radio too. And he's a huge Star Trek fan in real life, and but I say the same kind of things. I just say it kind of in a different way. But I think all we as fans should start talking to each other, even if you hate somebody and you hate what they represent. You can take the high road as you take them down, if that's what you want to do. Ori A says, I've made a 30-minute doc about my toy collection being a geek. Can I send it to you? I can also try cutting it into chunks if you prefer. Well, are you talking about submitting that to the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival? I would love to see your documentary about your toy collection. Now, our film festival is not, I specifically wanted to stay away from docs, but I would love, if it's about being a geek in your toy collection, please send it to me. You can go to the Burnettwork.net website, and on the top right corner, you'll see links where you can send me your documentary. So put it online, send it to me. I'd love to read it. Raymond Verada says, I just came in late. I saw your headline about small towns suing streaming services. In the Philippines, the Censors Board wants these streaming services to submit their movies for review. No rating from the board. It cannot be shown in the Philippines. Well, that to me, that's censorship. That sucks. And it sucks. So that's a bummer. But I understand, there's, again, religious ideas, there's social mores, there's things that, a lot of the world is not ready for the permissive nature of a free society like we have here in the United States. So I get that. I understand, but it's still, to me, censorship. Not good. Eric Gant is here, and Eric Gant says, I know this won't be a popular stance, but the series Lower Decks is strangely growing on me. Have you checked out the latest episode? I haven't seen the latest episode, but you know what? I'll freely admit it. I find Lower Decks rather amusing, but I feel that I would rather see Star Trek doing something else. I feel that, to me, it's really not hard to make comedic anything working within in a framework of something I love. Hey, Spaceballs and Star Wars. I fucking hate Spaceballs. I know. Everyone's like, rah, rah, rah. You tweeted a picture of the Spaceballs Lego set. I'm like, yeah, I would get the Spaceballs Lego set, but I'm not a fan of Spaceballs. I'm not a fan. So yeah, I like that. Mark C says, Rob, can you name the movie with this question? Did a time-traveling Tim Thomerson ever find Houston Astros Alan Ashby? I don't know. The only thing that comes to mind is Trancers. one of the Trances movies. I don't know the answer to that. But is that did somebody ask about is in a movie? I don't know. That would be my guess. That it would have to be Tim Thomerson. It's got to be Trancers, Jack Death. But other than that, I don't know. Alexander Wilson says black men want to burn down a thing. What? No, they do not. I live in D.C., which has one of the highest black populations, and nobody is burning down anything in my town. Get off that Twitter. It's not the real world. What are you talking about? Are you talking to me in particular? I was talking about more like burning down the world, not things, but burning down in general, and I wasn't speaking about black men burning down necessarily things. I was talking about in terms of like Black Wall Street, what happened at the beginning of Watchmen. No, I don't think people want to burn things down, but I will say this. During the LA riots, I watched neighborhoods being burned down. Hell, they burned down things in my neighborhood. And people that live there burned down things in my neighborhood. So, I don't necessarily, it wasn't just black people. It was everybody. Everybody was rioting, and being the melting pot of a city, Los Angeles was bad. I don't think that people need to do that. But, so, yeah. Crispy Critters sends in a super chat and says, remember when people knew how to debate? Yeah, I know, right? They used to. They used to know how to debate. I don't know what happened. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. Ian Samuels writes in a letter and says, Rob and fellow Robservationists, a little while ago I started my own YouTube channel. Presently, I'm focusing on real crime videos under the banner of Detective Squirrel Investigates. Why Detective Squirrel? Our family crest, our heraldry, has 2 red squirrels on it, so we jokingly refer to each other as squirrels. I've just completed the first of 3 Detective Squirrel Investigates videos. They make up a short series called They Weren't Jack, looking at the 3 main suspects of Jack the Ripper or the Whitechapel murders as named by the police investigating the murders at the time. Well, I'll put that in there. Let's see. Here is the link. And I'll put it in the live chat. So here's Ian Samuels. This looks funny. The music I just went and played that link, and the music's funny. So here you go. There is the link. There you go, Ian. It goes out to our fellow. There's 312 people around, so hey, there you go. Let's see. This one comes from William Quamul. Rob, I want to discuss the future of media viewing. This concerns ATSC 3.0, aka Next Gen TV, for over-the-air OTA TV broadcasts. This new standard will impact the major film studios, TV affiliates, streaming services, cable services, and telecom companies, as well as Roku and Fire Stick users. Broadcast and broadband feature of ATSC 3.0 is a hybrid internet connection. The OTA signal is an IP-based signal which represents the incoming or receiving path to a TV or a mobile device. The return path requires an internet connection back to the broadcaster for data collection for targeted ads and user data, login, password, interactive, on-demand for subscription services. The bottom line is that there is less bandwidth on the internet end because incoming data is not sent over the internet, but on an OTA path. ATSC 3.0 will include the Dolby HC4 format, which allows for up to 7.14 channels of audio. ATSC 3.0 will include HDR and 4K. Already you're making my mouth water. With broadcasters broadcasting an ATSC 3.0 to half of the U.S. market by summer 2021, every major movie studio with TV affiliates will be able to provide their streaming services over the air, i.e. Disney, ABC, and Disney+. Is that why HBO Max and Paramount Plus haven't signed a long-term agreement with Roku or Amazon Fire Stick? Ooh, this is very interesting. You know what? By the way, I hadn't read this letter when I did today's show, so this is interesting. Broadcasters could lease sub-channels to telecom companies like Spectrum for broadband broadcast TV content. How interesting. South Korea is already broadcasting in ATSC 3.0. Some areas of the U.S. started broadcasting in ATSC 3.0, Idaho, Washington, D.C. With ATSC 3.0, Roku and Fire Stick devices would be bypassed, rendering them obsolete. Plus, the consumer would have choices, but costs could spiral upwards with multiple subscriptions. Here is the list of major studios with TV affiliates and streaming services, studio TV and streaming services. Universal NBC Peacock, Paramount CBS Paramount Plus, Warner Brothers CW, HBO Max, Walt Disney, ABC, and Disney Plus and Hulu. 3 of the above studios are backed by major telecom companies, which means that there is an infrastructure in place for cable-like subscriptions. Universal with Comcast Xfinity, Paramount with Viacom, and Warner Brothers AT&T, DirecTV, and Spectrum. The only other major studio, Sony Columbia, will have to align with Fox TV or other independent TV stations to develop a dedicated streaming service over the air. Wow. This is fascinating. This is going to affect all of us. Wow, this is good. See, I learned something new on the show every day. Here's a link to the Consumer Reports article showing the implementation of the standard. This is definitely something to read, folks. Definitely something to read. I'm going to put that in the live chat. Rock on. There are social consequences to all of this, but this should be discussion amongst the PGS. Can you imagine watching OTA TV anywhere, over the air, TV anywhere, using a mobile device, or watching TV from a cell phone while driving a car? Well, you can do that with streaming, but wow. Well, William, thank you for that letter. What an interesting letter. And check out that Consumer Reports. You know what? I'm going to keep this letter around here because I want to read that afterwards. That's pretty dope, man. Omar94 is back again with another letter. Hi, Rob. Jason Webster's letter talking about Asian cinema got me thinking. Hollywood movies get promoted all over the world, but we don't get a whole lot of promotion for foreign films in the U.S. and sometimes other countries unless there's Oscar nominations and wins, like Parasite or Life is Beautiful. Now, of course, there are foreign films which film critics, film historians, film students, and or movie fans are aware of, from iconic foreign filmmakers like Sergei Eisenstein, Akira Kurosawa, Ingmar Bergman, Federico Fellini, Sergio Leone, and Jean-Luc Godard, but other foreign films from foreign filmmakers are not really talked about. There are a number of foreign films I like. It can come from anywhere, like parts of Asia or Europe. For example, there's a number of Hong Kong movies I like, such as 2 movies made by John Woo and starring Chow Yun-fat, which you and Jason brought up, The Killer and Hard Boiled. Absolutely. I think Studio Ghibli in Japan makes a lot of great movies, but they aren't marketed that well here in the U.S. and maybe other countries. French movies, I think, can be great too, like Amélie. Italian cinema can also be great, like with Cinema Paradiso, which Siskel and Ebert reviewed on their show. I think it's a shame we don't see a whole lot of promotion for foreign films, as there are plenty of good ones out there, and they could have had the potential to do really well if they were marketed well. Thanks, and live long and prosper. I hate to say this. I don't know. Let's find out. Let's do a cursory Google search. How many Americans have passports? Let's see what that answer is. Wow. Okay. I'm gonna answer this in 2 parts. Okay. I'm gonna answer your question, Omar. According to right now, the United States has a population as of 2019 of 328.2 million. 328.2 million. Now, without Googling, because it would take away my fun, how many Americans do you think have passports? According to Census and State Department data, 21.4 million passports had been issued in 2016, which is the most ever. That means that 42% of Americans hold a passport, a growth of 15% since 2017. So a record amount of Americans, they say 42% of Americans hold a passport. All right. So those are 42% of Americans that are even open to traveling because they have passports. So there you go. And I think that explains why we don't have more foreign films in this country. Unfortunately, America, outside, and again, I don't want to, make this, I don't want to bash on my fellow countrymen, but Americans, because we have such a big land, in other places in the world, most countries are a lot closer to other people. And like when you go to Europe, you can hop on a train and go through multiple countries in just a few hours with histories and languages that are all different. I think in the United States, we just don't have that kind of thing going on. So I think that there's not a lot of reading subtitles is just not something people love to do in this country, and we're not really trained to do that. I think that people watch less foreign films than they used to too. I mean, obviously, in the 60s, there was a lot of foreign cinema that was coming to at least the big cities, and it was a big part of culture. And now we get less and less. I mean, I don't actually know what the numbers are in terms of how much foreign cinema we get, but I think it's a lot less. But foreign films are still big in immigrant communities. Like that's why Netflix has a lot of foreign stuff on it, because there's a lot of Indian content, there's an Italian content, Asian content, because they're catering to the whole planet. And I'm hoping, it's my hope that with more great, when you have things like Money Heist or something that are these very cool shows from different countries, and Netflix is actually dubbing more and more of these things into English, I think there's going to be an uptick, at least I'd hope, in Americans that have seen foreign films. So I think I'm excited. I think it's pretty cool. I think more Americans will watch more foreign films. At least I would hope. But I think man, it's hard enough to get Americans to be interested in stuff in their own country, much less foreign countries. But I think the answer is simple. People it's too much work for them. This one comes from Saban Erdman. Hi, Rob. Legendary bought all Dune rights. If it is as successful as they hope it is, do you think they'll use the Brian Herbert books for the story after Chapter House Dune? Or do you think they will do their own thing that is a little more along the lines of what fans thought was going to happen in Dune 7? Spoilers, for example, Daniel and Marty are face dancers and not ancient robots. Oh, that's a deep cut for you Dune fans out there. Yeah, I don't agree with that idea at all. I do think they'll do similar things to how HBO's Watchmen follows a different and, in my opinion, better canon than what is the official DC Comics canon as told in Doomsday Clock. What do you think? First of all, to be honest, I hate that they've continued Watchmen. I thought the TV show was a mixed bag, but there's a lot of really ambitious stuff in it, and I didn't like Doomsday Clock very much. I wish Watchmen was left alone. I know it was too hard, too much of a, but look, as far as I feel, the Dune book, there are 6 Dune books, and I understand Kevin Anderson and Brian Herbert carried on the Dune legacy with their own books, but I don't recognize those books as canonical, even though they used Frank Herbert's notes, and I know Brian Herbert is Frank Herbert's son, but there are 6 Dune books to me. Dune is Frank Herbert. And it's, as we say it with me, kids, Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, Chapter House Dune. That's it. But your question is, I think it depends really how well Dune does. I mean, are they going to get to all 6 Frank Herbert books? I think that's hugely ambitious. I would love to see them do that. It really is going to depend on how many people go see Dune and how many people like it, but I think that we won't have to worry about that because it's a long way away. But I mean, boy, I sure would like to. I hope that they do more of the Dune books. Victor Rosario Fermain, I think it's Fermain. I always get it. Victor, I always get it wrong. Dear Rob, another 007 letter, or is it? The kid was only 15, not old enough to drive yet, and in 1977 he was the average acne-besieged and insecure teenager. The comic book collecting, Starlog reading, girly mag under the mattress kind, a fuzzy-haired nerd who didn't quite look like one. He went to an art-centric high school in uh, Condado, Condado, oh, Condado, a touristy area of his hometown of San Juan. The beach was only a quarter-mile away. Most of the other students were from the neighboring towns of metro area, so most of the bi-weekly Saturday night house parties were held far from home. The kid owned the most albums, so he was the de facto DJ. Sometimes, when there was no ride home, he stayed the night at his best buddy's house. The kid's mother didn't mind. She could be tough, but also understanding. The details of this particular party faded from his memory long ago, but what followed the next day is crystal clear. After the obligatory post-party Saturday morning or Sunday morning cleanup, and they might as well do it too, lawn mowing, the kid who never seemed to be able to relax in the first place was starting to fret. It was late in the afternoon, and his pal's parents hadn't taken him home yet. When they got in the car, his anxiety evaporated until they unexpectedly veered toward the Laguna Garden strip mall, where the fabled UA Cinema 150 theater loomed. I know that well. Not yours, but I know mine. Now the kid was feeling embarrassed. He was not carrying enough money to pay for a movie ticket. He shouldn't have worried so much. They forgot to tell him that they wanted to reward him with a movie for all the hard work he'd done. And what movie was it? The Spy Who Loved Me. He would have immediately fell in love with the breathtaking Barbara Bach, but minutes before, as he was just starting to feel comfortable in his seat, a movie trailer shook his soul. His eyes couldn't believe what they had seen, like a virus. The first glimpses from a galaxy far, far away kept expanding in his mind. It took about 20 minutes to break the spell and focus on 007, Anya Amasova, Jaws, and the too cool Lotus Esprit S1 that transformed into a mini submarine. Man, he loved that movie, but once it ended, the memory of that trailer resurfaced in full force. He promised himself then and there that this second movie in this air-conditioned cinematic cathedral would be this thing called Star Wars. It demanded that staggeringly huge screen. Star Wars was released in May in the mainland, but the rollout was molasses slow in those days, so Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, 3PO, R2, and Vader reached the island on Thursday, October 6th. Wow. On Sunday, October 9th, 1977, the kid took 2 buses to return to Laguna Gardens and keep his promise. On that date, George Lucas's film proved to be a life changer. He had no idea that a whole generation would feel the same way. The movie stayed in theaters seemingly forever, and he felt that with each sip of his cinematic holy grail, his perspective broadened and his focus sharpened. The kid lost count after the 20th screening. Back then, franchises were few and far between. Bond, Planet of the Apes, and The Godfather. He had no reason to suspect that the best was yet to come only 3 years later. The kid eventually learned to be calm, cool, and collected, but he refuses to be 58, and I have to apologize on his behalf for the lengthy trip to yesteryear. But I guess that's what happens when Robert Meyer Burnett sings the Zoom TV show theme song. Come on and zoom, 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 zoom. Come on and zoom, 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 zoom. Everybody's doing it. Anyway, I won't go on. People don't even know that anymore. I'm like, how do you not know Bernadette? You know, I guess people don't. I didn't see that one coming. Happy to be a connoisseur crewman in the Starship USS Imagination, Captain Burnett. Well, we're happy to have you. P.S. Claudia says hi. By the way, both of us wish the Robservations logo was bigger on the coffee cup. It's a nice design, but too small. Victor Rosario from Maine. Am I getting that right? Carolina. Is that Carolina, Puerto Rico, USA? Well, I'm happy to have you, Victor. And you know what? I'm going to design a better coffee cup. I'll make the Robservations logo bigger. I love that. Thanks for buying a coffee cup, by the way. What a great letter. Love that letter. Let's see. Wow, this is a letter I can't read on the air, but let's just say it's a fun letter to have received. This is a fun letter to have received. Very fun. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's see. Voltaire's Puppet sent in a super chat and says, there have been riots in Manhattan since September 4th or on September 4th. Yeah, look, I don't understand. To me, it's counterproductive. Protest, constitutionally guaranteed, all about that. But having riots and burning things down and ruining businesses, what is the point of that? I mean, I don't understand. That's not helpful. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Mark C sends in a super chat. Trancers is correct. Why Alan Ashby? I have no idea, but for some reason he was key in protecting the future. I was on the set of Trancers too, at Union Station, and I've told the story. I actually went to I don't know if it was a rap party, and I talked to Helen Hunt. We actually played pool. Mr. Jones sends in a super chat and says, "Hey Rob, Henry Cavill signed a 3-film deal. Thoughts? Did he? Let's hang on. Let's look. Let's look and see if Henry Cavill signed a 3. Oh my God! Oh my God! Where have I been? Oh, I've been on the show for over 2 hours, so I haven't seen this. This is amazing." Hang on a second. Let's see if it's on Deadline. I'm reading on nerd sites, but Henry Cavill. Wow. Well, okay. It's not on Deadline. So, The Cultured Nerd, The Express. Okay, I'm going to read this. Well, there's The Cultured Nerd, The Express. Let's see what it says here. It says, having starred in Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Justice League, Henry Cavill's Superman has been rather quiet of late. Rumors he was leaving the role sprouted at one point, but now sources say the 37-year-old is reprising his role as the DC superhero after signing a new deal. According to TCN insiders say the new contract includes 3 movies and options for... You know what? Don't buy it. I don't buy it. It's not in the trades yet. Hang on. Let me check. Let me check Hollywood Reporter. And we shall see if it's there. Yeah. Don't see anything about it yet. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold off and not talk about it until it is official. It's not coming from any of the official sites, so I can't say anything about it. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that brings this episode of Robservations, episode number 516, to an end. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Robert Priso, and Haynock is here, and Haynock. Greg Smith is here, and I want to thank them. I also want to thank, of course, the Richard, and I want to thank Mr. Derringer. I want to thank Mike Bodden for everything you guys do. They're great. I want to thank all of you for supporting the channel via super chats or tips and all that. And thank you for writing in letters. And remember, we're going to announce we're not announcing, we're opening up entries for the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival on October 1st. And we are currently running a poster contest. And if you win the poster contest, you become a judge. And here is a look at some of those posters. These are people that have already sent in work. And look at these designs. We're getting some great stuff. And there's a video on YouTube that explains it. And we're getting more all the time. So put on your graphic design hat. And why don't you throw in the towel? No, don't throw in the towel. Throw in an entry. Don't throw in the towel. I want you to throw in an entry. Anyway, yeah, great show. Thank you for everybody. To everybody. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.